Jai Baba, thank you very much, Adele, for all the praise which I don't deserve. But I'm really happy to be back with you all. You're a great Baba family, and I never knew I would be back so soon. In the last 11 months, I've had every experience that Baba could give me. I've climbed mountain slopes, walked miles, and then experienced an earthquake in San Diego, which I didn't think was an earthquake. I thought I was dreaming at first. And the second one, I was in a shower, and I thought the road workers were drilling outside, and I sort of grumbled at them, why are they shaking the house? And when I went down, my cousin and his family were looking at the television. I said, what are you doing? He said, there was an earthquake. I said, oh, was that it? I said, oh my goodness, I brought an earthquake to America. Anyway, however, we've all survived it, and we are grateful, and I hope and pray that by Baba's grace, the rest of the people who were the victims of the suffering, Baba will give them courage and strength to bear their suffering. And, well, to begin my stories, I have to first thank the LA Baba family for inviting me and my family, and to your 17th Sahavas, is it 17th Baba Sahavas? I don't know. 18th, yeah. Anyway, we are very happy to participate some of our stories, or all our stories of our times with the beloved. And I hope I can, say the right things at the right time. I'm a bit nervous at the moment. As you know, it is a very precious thing to be in Baba's presence, and you must have heard it from several people around the world who have been in his presence. It's a memory that never fades, it's forever green. And my life started with him when I was a toddler. And some of you must have heard my stories when I came through LA last year. So just briefly, I'll give you an account of how I used to see Baba as a child. We lived in a joint family home at the Trust Building, which was then called Khashru Quarters. So Adi Senior's family, my family, and my Uncle Sarosh's family. And I used to see Baba as a 4-year-old walking along the compound to Gulmai, who was Adi Senior's mother and Baba's spiritual mother. And every time I saw him, I thought he was floating. I never saw his foot landing on the ground. It was so curious, but my curiosity grew from that. And my mother was a Baba lover, my uncle was a Baba lover. So as the years went by, I asked questions, and they told me lovely stories. So my love for Baba got deeper and deeper since then. And naturally, I wanted to see him. But unfortunately for my brothers and I, we had no good schools in Ahmednagar in those days. So we had to go to boarding school. It was a British rule, British Raj. And to get into a good English school, non-Christians, because it was a convent, had to pay double the fee. So my parents had to pay double the amount for us to go have an education. And so we were away 9 months out of the year. And so the 3 months that I came home for my holidays, in that time, if there was a moment Baba invited people, then my mother used to take me to see Baba. But before that, I must tell you that my very first physical meeting with Baba was at Gulmai's house. And I was really looking forward to it, but feeling nervous at the same time. So I wanted to look my best. So I had frizzed my hair like anything the night before with these little curlers, and wanted to wear a pretty dress because I knew he liked people to be dressed properly. I was 10 and a half, and I got all dressed up, and my hair was in this massive powder puff ball, and I didn't know, I couldn't straighten it down. Anyway, we had to go to Gulmai's quarters, and Baba's very strict on punctuality, so we all had to be there on time. In fact, 10-15 minutes before time. And so my mother and I went, and I think there were a few Western women there then. It was a small gathering. Baba was sitting on a dais there, beautiful. He looks absolutely striking, and he was radiating all the love he could. We were all seated, and I think it was a mixed gathering, a few men and a few women, and Adi Senior was interpreting. I mean, I was right at the back. I was so shy and nervous, I wouldn't look up at Baba. I only looked up when he was looking somewhere else, sort of just to catch a glimpse of him. Because I felt, my goodness, he's going to go deep down into my soul, know everything I feel, Anyway, we just talked. He asked everybody everything, and I remember he asked my mother how I was, and this, that, and the other. And then the meeting ended. We all had to go up to him, pay our respects, bow down, embrace him. And I was just embracing him, and I think one of the Western women, I don't know who, just mentioned, by the way, oh, who's this little girl with this curly hair? And I felt I felt that, somebody swallow me up. Anyway, so Baba said, oh, she has a lot of travel, and she'll be doing some work for me. Anyway, I didn't think about it. Adi Senior interpreted. But that was my first meeting. So every holiday, whenever I had a moment, and we were invited up the hill for certain functions, I used to go with my mother. And we had fun. Mani would entertain us. It was just lovely to be in the presence of this, God. His divinity was, and he was there sitting with us, watching mundane, things, jokes, and Mani would act, and it was full of laughter and full of fun. And then we would be given lovely, delicious snacks and meals. And the time, they had to go to bed early, so we had to leave early. And then the time came for everybody to say goodbye. And I must tell you, I was only 13 then. This particular time. And I was this height when I was 13. So I went up to say goodbye to Baba. I did my goodbyes, and my mother did it. And Baba asked my mother, how is she doing? So my mother said she's all right, And then she sort of in a joking way said, but Baba, she grows tall. Every month she comes, every term she comes, and she grows an inch tall, and I have no clothes for her. So she said, can't you put a stone on her head to keep her where she is, So Baba smiled, and then he called me, and I came to him, and then I saw his hand go on my head, and I said, oh, that's it. I'm not going to grow. And I didn't. I never grew after that. And so the years went by. I finished my senior Cambridge, and I went to what we call college in India. And I had met Adi just before going to college and hoping to get married. But 3 years I studied. I dropped out the last year because I had health problems. And I was, living out of home. The food wasn't good. So I dropped out. I regret it now, but what can you say? Anyway, it was Baba's way. And a few years later, Adi and I had already met, but we married, I think, 47? It was the time of the Indian independence, when after Gandhi was assassinated. And so our wedding day was actually the day the Queen and Prince Philip married. Baba chose that, and we agreed. And it wasn't a very big affair. It was celebrated in Villoo and Sarosh's, my uncle's home. And Adi and I had seen Baba a few days prior to the wedding. And so we said that we won't see Baba again till we've married. So after the wedding ceremony was just good. We were getting ready to get married in the afternoon, and I was called by Adi Senior that Baba wants myself and Adi to be present at his office at a certain time before the official ceremony. So I was again nervous. I said, oh my goodness, the actual wedding ceremony was coming up and I was going to be nervous. But with Baba, I said, again, I've got to go to Baba. I mean, I loved Baba, but just to be in front of him made me so humble, He is such a great being. And I'm a nobody, really, Anyway, I was happy. I was happy that I was going just before my actual wedding day. And so Adi went in a separate car. My mother took me in and I still have the sari I wore when I went there. And so it's a little worn because it's over 40 years. And I entered Adi Senior's office and Adi came. And we both waited in the ante-room of the office. And we had to be at least 15 minutes early because Baba sometimes turned up early. So we were there waiting, and I was shaking in my boots again, and I didn't know what to do. Why was he calling us? I said, he's already blessed us, And anyway, Baba came. I had my garland of flowers and everything my mother had got for me. And then after a few minutes after Baba arrived, Adi Senior called me, and I went in, bowed down, gave Baba the flowers, and he felt I was shaking and nervous, and he held my hand. He said, don't worry. He said, I'm with you. And then he took me and sat me down on his right hand side, And he again repeated, don't worry. And then he just to relax me. You've all seen his hand games, haven't you? Gestures of his games. He does this and does this. So to calm me down, he did all this for me. And he sort of played with me, and I smiled and he smiled, and I was feeling a little calmer, and he held my hand all the time. And then he asked Adi Senior to call Adi. And then Adi came in, and Baba made him sit on the left side of him, and he said something to Adi, which I heard at the time, but I can't remember. I was still, a little bit tense. Anyway, Baba then took my right hand and took Adi's right hand and on his lap joined them together and put his hand on our hands, And I felt, it was the best thing I could have had. It was the wedding that I was waiting for, the other was nothing compared to what I had. So after that, Baba, we said, goodbye to Baba, and he again repeated, not to worry, he's with me. And I try to keep that with me all the time, of my married life, because as you all know, marriage is a challenge. And to step into one with Baba, Baba's family was unique. However, it made my day, so I was very comfortable at the official ceremony, which was quiet and it didn't matter. People forgot to even take our wedding pictures, so it didn't matter. I didn't have a honeymoon, but the wedding went off well. But the first few years of our married life, we never had a permanent home. We were moving from one home to another, in Ahmednagar in the beginning. And so we didn't have a settled feeling. Then we thought of going to Pune. Villoo, my uncle Sarosh had 2 young children who were going to school in Pune, and so we thought we would keep them and they could go to day school. And Dara was with us too. So we looked around in Pune for a house and found this big mansion right way out away out of Pune, right beyond, near the Tower of Silence, Zoroastrian Tower of Silence. And it hadn't been occupied for several years. So it was so big, so we could only use half. Anyway, we thought we'd have it for a few years and see how we survived there. And when Adi and I walked in, when we did, God, the things that came out of that house cobras, white, black widows, scorpion, you name it, everything came out of it. And but we cleaned it up. But what was so unique, I mean, we sort of settled in and we were living there for a couple of years. But what was so unique was Baba gave us a surprise visit one afternoon. He came, he was going to Satara. And Adi and I had just finished lunch. The children had gone to Ahmednagar for their holidays. So unfortunately, for some reason, I had Baba's favorite food that afternoon. I had rice and dal and the fish he liked, Indian fish called pomfret. You don't get it here. So, but there was some left. And whilst I was removing the plates and things, and with my little boy I was training, Adi calls out, "Franey, there's a car driving up the driveway." I said, "Oh, who's it?" He said, "Looks like Baba's car." I said, "Oh my goodness." Panic struck me again, and I said, "Heavens, what am I going to do? There's no food if he asks for it. What am I going to do?" And I hadn't, we were using ordinary cutlery, ordinary china, and as soon as I heard, I said, "Better get my best china out." And I was fumbling, dropping everything, and the little boy couldn't do anything. Anyway, finally, Baba pulls up at the porch, and I'm still trying to tidy up the place because Baba liked everything spick and span. However humble it was, it had to be neat and tidy. So I was worried about that. I said, "Oh, he'll make a point in saying, 'Oh, this is dirty, that is dirty.'" And I left Adi to whatever Baba had to say, and I was trying to tidy up and laying the table for him in case he wanted lunch. And I got the table set up, and I told the little boy, "Go and put the food away and keep it warm, and I'll call for it." Then when Baba comes into this living room, I meet him, and Baba says, "I want lunch." And I said, "Yes, Baba. I mean, I've got something, but I don't know if you like it." So he said, "No, whatever it is, So I took him to the seat. I remember the table even. We had had a furniture, sort of a furniture mart in Ahmednagar, and we had a dining table made. So he sat at the head, and I'd laid the table with my so-called best china, and gave him his rice and dal and the fish. Baba never ate much, and I was standing there, and he was saying, "Don't be nervous," and again held my hand. I said, "No, Baba, I'm not nervous." And then he said, "Help me," and I dished out his food and gave him the rice and dal. And he always ate, as you know, ate with his fingers. And he hardly had 3 mouthfuls, and I thought, "Oh, he doesn't like my food." I wasn't cooking then, but I knew the recipe, so I used to train the little boy. So after he finished, he had a glass of water, I remember, and I gave him some water to wash his hands. And he said, "That's finished." And then I asked him sort of very humbly and meekly, I said, "Baba, you didn't like the food?" He said, "No, I liked it. It was very nice." And then he went in. Then I think there were a few men mandli, so we had to give them food. And Adi had a little private talk with Baba, and for a few minutes, and the mandli had to rush eating, and then they were setting off after they'd finished. So we went and waved goodbye to Baba. But that, as I say, that was such a wonderful visit. I mean, I wasn't prepared. I mean, if he announced that he was coming, I would have done all sorts of things, garlands all over the house, flowers everywhere, or whatever I could do. But he didn't want it that way. He just gave us a surprise visit. And what was so lovely that, he came on his own with a few men mandli. And it was so intimate, even though it was 40 minutes. But it was, I think, a lifetime for me. And then after he had been there, but he liked the area so much that I think there was something going on in Merazad. There was some renovations going on in Merazad. So he wanted to be out of Ahmednagar with the mandli, and this house was just suitable for that time. So he told Adi, when we met him, that, he would like to come and stay here. And I mean, that was amazing, to have Baba stay in your house, And this was an old dilapidated house way out in the wilderness. But, and had snakes and cobras and ghosts, mind you. I didn't tell you, we had ghosts. Haunted, it was haunted. So when Baba came for about 3 or 4 days at the most, to stay in that house, and again, I wanted the best linen, I wanted everything best for him, because he occupied Adi's and my room, and the women mandli, the next room, adjoining room where the children stayed. It was only Mehran money, I think. Anyway, so that was one beautiful time, but we couldn't stay there. We had to be out. Adi and I stayed in Baba's house, actually in the pumpkin house. You all know Baba, where Baba was born. So we stayed a few nights there and visited Baba when we could. Now again, we had this feeling of travel, move. We didn't like Pune. Actually, Adi didn't like it. So we went back to Ahmednagar, and it was, I think, when Francis and Don Stevens had their first meeting with Baba. So Baba asked Adi and I to host them, be their host and hostess, see to their food and their lodgings at Mehrabad. So we got to know Don and Francis pretty well, and talking to Don, Adi felt it would be nice to go to America. And we thought, well, he asked me, I said, I don't mind, if that's what you want, we'll go. And so after Don and Francis's time with Baba, they left. And then Adi and I saw Baba again. And Adi said to Baba, it would be nice if we could go to the West and live there, because Don has offered to sponsor us. And it was easy then, Americans those who were citizens could sponsor outsiders. And so Baba thought a bit. He said, no, if you have to go, you go to England. So that's why we went to England, because his choice was England. But our choice was to go out of the India, basically for my own sake, because I was so sheltered as a child. I had no outlet, I was with my family all the time. And I wanted to escape from I loved my family, but I wanted to escape and do my own thing a bit. So Adi, Baba, we said we'll think, we'll think about the time. I must tell you though, before I went to live in England, we went to London for a short while, because I hadn't had a honeymoon, and Adi felt a little bit bad because everything was very low key for me when I married him, because for some reason Villoo didn't want that, and Baba in his own way wanted to please Villoo. So everything was very low key for me, and my parents wanted a grand wedding. But I didn't mind, my wedding was with Baba, so it didn't matter to me. But Adi felt that he owed something to me to give me a honeymoon. And so Baba and the Mandli, as you know, were planning to go in 52 to America and Europe. And so Adi went up and told Baba and said, can't you take Freni with you? So Baba said, no, if I take Freni, there'll be others who want to come. So, Baba knew what he was doing. But he said, look, do this. You and Freni go off to England and stay there for about a few weeks, because they'd already gone in April, and we were to meet him in sometime mid-June. So, and then and we'll join you in Europe. So we thought that's fine. So we had a car which Baba had given us as a gift for our wedding. And so we sold that and used that money for our passage and whatever expenses we needed We had some money. And so we booked our passages to go to England in 52 at the end of May. And you know, in those days, steamer liners, the journey took 13 to 14 days going from Bombay to England. Anyway, we went there. Baba was already in America, so we were hoping to join him. And we were there for about 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks, when we heard the news. I think it was some Baba person or Delia told us that Baba had an accident. So naturally, we were very concerned and wondering now what the plans would be. We couldn't stay on here forever. We didn't have sufficient funds. So anyway, we waited for more news, and in those days, the service by air wasn't that great, and the cable service was all right. So the news came a few days later that through Dr. Donkin, and he came and saw us, and he said, Baba wants us to leave at this time. We must not be here in London when they came to London. So we had only a week, 10 days to find a passage back. And it was difficult, you know, because it was the height of the summer season. People went on cruises. So anyway, whatever it was an order we had to observe. So we went to the shipping company. And Adi just went to the man and said, look, we want a ship sailing before this date. He looked at us as if we were mad, stupid. He said, look, you won't get a ship at this time of the year. You never do. And then he showed us a mile-long waiting list. I said, well, we've been told we have to go. And anyway, we finally said, put our name on the waiting list. So he put it down at the end of about 5 pages of people who had their names on. And we said, we've done our bit, and we'll now just leave the rest to Baba, you know. I mean, he wanted us out, so we'll go out if he wants us to get out. So we went home to our lodgings, and the next morning, I was worried because I thought if we don't go, what will Baba say, you know. And so next morning, we get up and the phone rings, and it's the P&O company. And they had a 2-berth cabin leaving in a week's time. So this is what Baba does. He doesn't do miracles, but he does it, you know, does it. When he wants us out of the way, or when he wants things done, he does it. So I was absolutely shocked. I mean, none of us could believe it could happen. It happened overnight. Anyway, so that we then sailed back, and then the story is how I came to live in Pune. I missed that sequence, I'm sorry. But after that, we were planning to go to England. So we booked our passages to go to England in August of 1955. And so we packed everything that we owned, our belongings, our furniture, and my parents offered to store it for us if we had to come back. So, and we said we'd stay with them for a few weeks before we sailed. So all our stuff was stored with my parents, and we were staying there. And we booked our passage to leave on a certain day in August. And Baba knew all that. Everything was consulted through Baba. We never did anything without his consultation. So we were just getting ready now, a week more, 10 days more, packing our remainder of our things, when we get a cable, cancel. So we had to cancel. We had paid a deposit. Well, that didn't matter to Baba. We had to do it. We lost the money. Cancel, but no further news. He said, I will let you know when you can go. So again, how can we stay with our parents for this length, my parents for this length of time, So we had to find another house in Ahmednagar till Baba gave another time we could go. So again, we had to move. And I'm still moving at my age now. So anyway, we found a little house just opposite, most of you have been to Ahmednagar and know the Sarosh cinema in Dowlat. We were adjoining Dowlats. The cottages were very nice in those days. So my uncle had the cottages and we rented a little cottage from him. So we were back to square one again. We didn't know what was happening. And so a month goes by, a month and a half, and then Baba calls us again. And I mean, it's just so amazing that in all the universal work he was doing, he was still concerned about his close ones and everyone, you know. It's amazing how I couldn't get over that. I said, my God, only God could do that, and he is God. So anyway, he called us, and I thought again, he's telling us to stay on here for much longer, but no. He said now we could go in February. So we were, I think it was the month of November, and he said we could go in February. So we again booked our passages, thinking what shall we do? We'll lose our money again or what? Anyway, we booked our passages, and then afterwards we realized when we heard the news about the freeze in London, that England didn't have any central heating in those days. So everything was frozen, and Baba didn't want us to go for our first winter to a frozen country, absolutely frozen up. Everything was frozen, pipes frozen, sewage not working, So he didn't want us to have that experience. We realized afterwards, after we heard the news of the freeze that they had in London. And so, this is how it's so wonderful when I look back on all this. I mean, at the time it can get frustrating when he tells you to cancel and you've got to go back and, unpack. But he does it for you, And I felt really gracious and grateful to him for what he did to us. Because we would have come back immediately, taken the next boat back. And he didn't want that. I don't think he did want that. Because from the next time I met him in London, some of you must have heard that story, and I told it, I think, yesterday probably. I don't want to repeat it. But I think he did want us to stay in England for some reason, although Adi didn't like it. But there was a reason, because when he dropped his body, there was such a flow of people, Baba people coming through London. And none of the older Baba lovers, wanted the young hippies coming through their threshold doors, So we were the only welcoming hands, So at several times I've had 15, 20 people sleep in our house, sleeping on the floor. Will David isn't here. He used to sleep out in the garden. And, sorry, yes, okay, 5 more minutes. Anyway, so I've only got 5 more minutes, so I'll make it brief now, and perhaps another time I can carry on. But this is how it happened, and the Baba people came through our house, and it was wonderful to see such young love coming for Baba, My husband was a great person for that. And I know that Baba had a reason for us to stay, because he brought Baba. He was very down to earth. People when they first came thought we were an elderly couple, that he was a bearded old man and I was an old little lady, And so whenever I opened the door to anyone, they used to just couldn't believe it, because we were just ordinary people, We weren't Baba. I mean, he was Baba's brother, of course. That was very important. But we were just ordinary people. But the message is, huh?
I don't want to interrupt you, Franey, but before you finish, I wanted to ask you if you could tell the stories about going to the cinema with Baba.
Huh?
I wanted to ask you if you could tell the stories about going to the cinema with Baba.
Oh yes. Oh, I forgot that incident. Baba, as you know, used to go to movies. When he had the whim, he used to make the women Monday dressed up, all in their Sunday best clothes. They all were dressed up, trimmed up. And we were allowed to go because, and we used to go to the Sarosh cinema, and we had the first showings that were shown in the West. All the first showings, come to this cinema, Sarosh cinema, and he used to see 3 movies at a time. He wouldn't see it. I mean, he made everybody else see it. He was always up and down. He was so busy, he hardly sat. But he had work to do. But we had to go through 3 movies. But they were fun. It was always Laurel and Hardy, Bud Abbott and Lou Costello, Bob Hope. He just, it was such fun. I mean, I could stay on and talk, but now the memories are coming back. But it was just amazing. But I have got not much time. So what I'll say that at the moment I'm wearing the sari I wore for Dara and Amrit's wedding. The last time I saw Baba, before he dropped his body, I try to wear it whenever there's a special function for Baba in remembrance of him. And that time was a very precious time because I didn't know that he wasn't going to be there again for us. But we met him, and I had a private meeting with him when we said our goodbyes. And it was an occasion that we'll never forget. And he told me, at the time I didn't know what he meant. And Erich was there, fortunately, because Erich said, "Do you want to be alone?" I said, "No, he knows everything. I don't want to. I mean, there's nothing I can tell. He knows me. He knows my whole soul. I mean, he's created me, whatever it is." So he said, "That's fine." So Baba said, "Yes, that's it. I know everything, what's going on in her mind." So he said, Baba just said, "Don't worry." And he repeated, "Never worry. I'm with you all the time." And he said, "Don't shed a tear when you leave me. I don't want tears." And then he said, "At the end of the month, everything will be known." And I didn't understand that. Just as well Erich was there, because I couldn't have fathomed it. And when we came home, as Shireen told you, when we left Bombay, I mean, she suddenly had this urge to cry because she felt she couldn't see Baba but I didn't know he was going to drop his body. And so I was thinking, I'll be coming back again. And just a few weeks later, we heard the news, as Shireen told you. And that was the end of it all, For everyone, a breaking point, especially for Adi, because he hadn't lost only God, he'd lost his blood brother, whom he loved and adored. And I've never seen a man so down. He felt absolutely broken. And all the family, in fact, all the brothers, because he was their mentor, in fact, all our mentors. And we did nothing without his consultation. So we missed him like you all miss him. I mean, you haven't seen him in physical form, but I think you're wonderful to love him as much as you do, not seeing him. I mean, we've seen him, so we know him and we know how he was. But I admire you, your wonderful family, and keep on holding on to his Daman, because he's there with you at every step you take. I can tell you from experience. So with that note, I'd like to quote, if you don't mind. The quotation of Baba: "I love you. Do not worry about your weaknesses. Eventually they will go. Even if they linger, love will one day consume them. Everything disappears in the ocean of love. Because I love you, you have a pool of love within you. When you feel wretched, when you fall in your weakness, have a dip in that pool of love. Refresh yourself in that pool of my love within you. It is always there. Even if you wash your weaknesses every day in that pool, it will remain clear. Don't worry, Baba loves you. That is what really matters." Jai Baba.